morning and welcome to Scotland Speaks, back here at 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning, and a very happy new year to you all. I'm hoping that 2025 brings you all much happiness, good health and prosperity, and of course the memories of 2024 and of course Alex Salmond remain with us, as you can see from all around the studio. Can I take this opportunity again to thank you for all of your support and the lovely messages that you have sent to me and to all of the team at the show. Now, there's much to discuss in the year ahead, some of which we're probably best not to comment on just now, because a lot of it is work in progress, so as to speak, and we'll see how the cards fall and be discussing many different topics over the weeks and months to come. But I'd like to thank you for all of your supportive messages. I'm going to start with some from last show that we had on air just before Christmas. Pauline says, "Thank you. Really look forward to the programme, and it's a great tribute to Alex. He is greatly missed, but always remembered. Still feeling so sad. Every time we cross the bridge, we speak of Alex Salmond." And of course, Pauline is referring to the Queensferry crossing, which Alex would always refer to as my bridge. Eleanor says, "So glad the show continues. The spirit of Urek lives on, and we shall realise his dream." Kizzy Wiz says, "Great news about the Alba memorial. So many of us couldn't make it to the memorial outside St Giles and desperately wanted to. Great to know that you'll be standing in your uncle's seat, Christina." And of course, Kizzy Wiz is referring to the memorial, which I'll come back to later on in the show, but that's happening on the 26th of January in Linlithgow. Pauline Brown says, "Great programme, excellent guests, well done." Donald says, "Absolutely spot on intro there, well said, excellent programme again." Simply Scottish says, "Please keep going, great show." Pim says, "To live on in the hearts we leave behind is not to die, so true." And Molly Cuddle says, "Thank you. I miss him, Alex, and cry so much thinking of our loss." Now, in the show before Christmas, we featured Mike Daly, who's the solicitor advocate acting in the case of the Fannings against both UK and Scottish governments. Let's take a look back at some clips from that show.
You know, often I think, for example, some people in the Labour government would make out, "Oh, we don't want, Lord Sugar doesn't need a winter fuel payment, does he?" Well, maybe no, maybe he doesn't, and but if you think about, there's almost 1 million people eligible for pension credit in the UK, but don't claim it, and they never do claim it. And this idea you're going to get them to claim it is Walter Mitty stuff, right? To get winter fuel payment now in Scotland or the rest of the UK, you've got to be in just about £11,000 a year. We know, because there's been some statistics done on this, that there's literally, several million people that are over that, but you would still consider them to be relatively on very low incomes. So they're the people, i.e. Peter and Flo Fanning, they're the people, they're the kind of the stereotypical couple that have worked hard all their life, are going to be losing out this winter. And I think that is so powerful to think about. Well, that could be my granny, that could be my papa. Do you know what I mean? And I think, I really think the whole policy on the winter fuel payment is just so wrong. And I have to say, if you think about what at least the Northern Ireland Assembly's done, it's given people of state pensionable age in Northern Ireland £100 this winter. Now, the Scottish Government could have done that, but they haven't done that. They're talking about doing it next year.
So the announcement, to be clear, was that yes, there will be some form of mitigation, but not this year. We're talking about the winter of 25 into 26.
Yes, that's exactly. And I don't think that necessarily came across in the way it was presented, but absolutely right, Tasmania. So that's of no use in terms of the here and now.
And on the Fannings, I've received more messages. Carlotta says, "Excellent programme. I had no idea about the fight about the winter fuel he put up, Alex, before he died. This was never explained anywhere. I'm so sad about his passing." And Louise Hogg says, "So good to hear about the concerted professional resistance being put up by the Fannings against cuts for the poorest pensioners who don't have youth on their side to go out and earn to augment their incomes. It would be great if a positive result was achieved in time for conference." Of course, she's referring to the Alba Party conference, which takes place at the end of March this year. And Louise says, "Good to see Josh Robertson maturing into one of those serious people we badly need." Indeed, so see all of us here at Scotland Speaks. She then goes on to say, I look forward to the memorial event announced for the 26th of January. And only yesterday, she says, my sister was discussing how the sour attitudes of the UK and recently Scottish Government and media have left many of us trapped in disenfranchised grief for Alex Salmond. Many thanks indeed for your messages. Do keep them coming back in. But we go back to the Fannings because this week saw a substantive hearing in their case against both the UK and Scottish governments in the Court of Session. And after the break, we'll be speaking to the Fannings themselves, Peter and Flo. So stay tuned. We'll see you shortly. Welcome back to Scotland Speaks, and it's a great pleasure that I am today joined by Peter and Flo Fanning. Welcome to Scotland Speaks.
Thank you, Taz.
Peter, I'm going to turn first to yourself. Now, I know you've been propelled, both of you have, to great fame over the past number of months in relation to this specific case, but you do have a history in standing up for people. Tell us a bit about Peter Fanning.
Peter Fanning's a kind of complex person, if you like. I've got my home life, but my employment stuff has always been round about helping and assisting people. I was working in the building trade and I took asthma when I was 35 years old, so I couldn't work any longer in building and civil engineering. And I happened to meet a community worker who encouraged me to get involved in voluntary action stuff in my own area of Kirkwood. And then I joined Strathclyde as a community work assistant at the time. And that involved round about helping groups to set up food co-ops, credit unions, mothers and toddlers groups, pensioners bingo nights, which I've got this kind of affinity with now. So I worked through that. And then when Strathclyde devolved into Glasgow City and the 32 authorities that we know now, Glasgow City decided that they didn't need their community workers, so we were absorbed into social work department, and I became a social care worker. And there I first started case managing elderly people, and that was about, you know, keeping them in their home, or if that wasn't possible, finding some kind of respite for them or whatever, or finding a care home. I think at that time I learned a lot. I was quite young myself, if you think about it, believe it or not. But I learned a lot off young people about how they've got experience and what their history is and how, you know, as their memory fades, actually getting prompts for them to remember what it was they'd done and what they'd achieved. And I think a lot in that time, I realised that although a lot of people have that experience, they don't have the experience of speaking for themselves. They don't have the experience of, you know, standing up for themselves, which is different from formulating a group, if you know what I mean, where you would naturally meet friends or family members. So that kind of instilled in me this bit about helping people who couldn't speak for themselves. I then left elderly care and went to the asylum team, which is a totally different thing, because then the kind of barriers I raised was, how do you speak to someone that doesn't speak your language? Do you know? And there's not always going to be an interpreter available, so how do you start building up that rapport and kind of managing what their needs and demands are? And how do they explain to us in the health service that, you know, they've got physical disabilities or mental or emotional, or, you know, most of them came from war zones or similar kind of places like that. So again, that was a kind of eye-opener for me about people who did not have the ability. So you've got people who, you know, don't have that kind of thing, if you like, about speaking up for themselves, but you've also got people that's disenfranchised because of language barriers and whatever. So I found myself, when I was presenting their cases, actually taking their part, rather than, I would say, forgive me for this, but following 100% the book. It's like, I think this person needs it, so maybe a bit more effort into what I was explaining. That we went to a thing called RASes, which is where you get the funding for any care plan. So after that, I was headhunted. When I was in the asylum team, I was headhunted for a disability team, because I'd worked with a lot of people with disabilities, and children and disabilities came through at that time. That was around about 2005.
Right.
So I joined a North Glasgow team based in Royston, and then started working with children with disabilities, with autism and ADHD and things like that, who, for all intents and purposes, parents tried to do the best for and meant the best for. But there was always some of the children where you came across the parents as saying, no, they can't do that, and putting barriers. But it was out of love, right? It was out of, I don't want my child getting into a danger zone, or I don't want anything like that to happen. But they'd nobody to speak up for them either. So kind of learning from that, and learning how to communicate, if you like, and finding a way to communicate with the child and the parent at the same time, to make sure that child got the best care, the best plan possible. And again, going in front of people at the RASes who were, you know, kind of looking more at the pounds, shillings, pence, if you like, the natural care plan. Because, I mean, I would maybe present, say, 4 care plans at any given RAS, but they were sitting on like 20, 24. And obviously there's limited funding to give out. So there was priorities that had to be met.
Now, it's clear from what you've told us already, Peter, you've got a huge background in equalities and understanding the challenges that face people, which is probably why you were really well placed to take up the mantle on behalf of pensioners everywhere, yourself and Flo, I should add, to challenge the winter fuel payment, primarily because there are many people, pensioners, who can't speak up for themselves. And I'm well aware that you were both plunged into the limelight at the press conference, although ably supported by Alex Salmond in Edinburgh, where you both demonstrated you had a real understanding and empathy for the problem in which people found themselves and the challenge that faced them, and also the lack of impact assessments that had taken place. Let's talk about, first of all, about that press conference, and then we're going to come back to the court case. So what was that like for you both? Flo, you were sitting there in front of all of the Scottish press corps.
That was actually the first time I'd met Alex Salmond. I'd never met him before, and I thought he was such a nice person. But at first, when they started asking me questions, I could feel a kind of tightness in my throat, as if to say, oh God, what am I going to say here? But I thought it was a good conference. I
don't think people fully understood until it was explained to them by people living the problem. And Peter, you were able to, I mean, Alex as ever gave a wonderful introduction, as he always does, able to encapsulate what the problem is in a language that everybody understands and is meaningful to them. And then Peter, you were able to speak about why it was so important to have the assessments that should accompany any policy making. And tell us a bit more about that and why it impacted you so much, the cutting of this allowance.
I mean, again, kind of looking at care plans for people, it kind of came to me that, you know, I could never do a care plan for an individual person in 3 weeks. So to actually do it for a whole country within that 3 week period didn't make sense to me. And then
should we say all of those people, I mean, it's a great feeling that of all of the tools that are available to governments, to be unable, unwilling, to not carry out the assessments is unforgivable.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to when I was a social worker, if I had the, 12 or 14 children that was doing care plans for to present at RAS, and I went and visited one child, and just based everybody's care plan on that one child, I would fail the other, 11 or 13 children, and then I'd be sacked for not doing my job. And to me, that's a bit like what the government has done. They've kind of looked at a figure and says, let's base it on the figure. Money's not always the issue. The issue is what that person needs. And that issue could be about health, it could be about, supporting the right place. Or as we talked about, maybe because of COVID, they've got used to staying in their house and can't speak to anybody, frightened to go out. There's 1,000,001 things. And until you do that equality impact assessment, you will never know what that individual is feeling and what their needs are.
So had an equality impact assessment been carried out on you and your household, what would it have found that is key to whether this policy was indeed workable, desirable, ethical?
Yeah. I mean, I think we can, our history of health, I don't make red blood cells, for instance, right? So I'm anemic and I get injections every 3 months. Cold affects me vastly. I start getting cold from my feet and my hands, as you can see, during the winter, every winter. So I need to get heat. If I feel the cold, then I need to go somewhere hot. Whether I'm out shopping and it's like, where's the nearest cafe? I need a cup of tea. I need to get something warm in me. Or if it's, in somebody's house, kind of put my feet in your hot water basin. So there's 1,000,000 ones, but the impact is the ongoing impact of it. And because it happened so quickly, this was in June, I believe, if you think about it. So in June, they made the decisions that everybody, the winter fuel payment was going to cease for certain people that were above a level. That impact right away upset our plan. We planned for a year at a time. So we'll sit and we'll go, that's how much money we've got for the year. That's when we can afford it and when we do. So we need to buy presents, we need to buy thingy for Christmas. And in this day and age, we've got 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter, that because of the way things are happening at the moment, and the cost of living, cost of mortgages, the whatever, we have to help them. Small amounts, I've got to say, not large amounts, but it's there. But that's because we're parents. Now, I would suggest that every old person in the UK plans ahead. So to actually disrupt those plans over a 3 week period where you're saying, we've discovered something that's always been there. I can't see how MD in a parliament can discover a 22 million haul when it's actually civil service that deals with all the income and the expenditure and should have the figures there.
Now, Alex Salmond had warned First Minister John Swinney,
yes,
in advance of your action, actually, that the Scottish Government should be doing what you ended up doing on behalf of all pensioners, which is challenging what the UK government had done. Unfortunately, that warning just passed and nothing was done, and it ended up then that your case had to be against both UK and Scottish governments. Now, we should say, of course, that the Scottish Government is going to mitigate next year at least some of the impact of the winter fuel payment cut. However, that hasn't helped been able to help anyone because of the timescales involved now, currently. And we've just been through an extremely cold spell and it's ongoing. Flo, can I ask you, you live in a community. How much has this cut impacted on people who you live in and amongst?
Well, I've spoken to quite a few people that live round about me, the same ages as us, maybe older, and they've said that they feel that they can't afford to put their heating on because it feels too much. They go to bed earlier on at night with a hot water bottle, or they sit with a big blanket round about them to keep themselves warm. That's the way they live. You know, there's...
And how have you, in the community, in fact, you are almost well-kent faces now, because whether you wished it or not, by virtue of suing both UK and Scottish governments, you're going to be cast into the limelight, particularly if you have the support of Alex Salmond, which you did, of course, when the case was launched, and you find yourself in front of the Scottish Press Corps, then on Good Morning Britain. Where else have you been on, and what's it been like having everyone flow in your living room with their cameras?
I don't mind it at all. I mean, the one that we had this morning, she put me at ease, and so did the young chap we had before that. They're very nice, they just put you at your ease and you're just talking away to them just normally.
And that, of course, was STV. Peter, how have you enjoyed being thrust into the limelight?
I think I've got to be honest about it and say that we spoke to Alex before that meeting in Edinburgh, and he told us exactly what was going to happen and practically predicted the questions that was going to come. And he sat beside me and says, look, see, if I want you not to answer a question, I'll just nudge your toe. So we had that whole thing. But I've got to say the press on that day kind of changed my opinion of the press, because I've always thought, when I've saw some of the interviews that's happened, that there's a kind of, this is what we want to hear, so this is what we're pressing you on. I actually believe that the press was on our side. I think there was a lot of people there that thought, this is unjust, and listening, not only to myself, but listening to Alex and listening to my Rachel from Government Law Centre.
Government Law Centre, yes.
So that whole thing kind of changed my opinion, and I've got to say that people that have come into our house, and we've had 3 now, coming into it, have all been talking about their granny and how it's affecting them. So there's been a knock-on effect, I think, from the kind of press and well, some of the media, I'll not say it all, because I've read some scaring stuff as well. But basically, I think it's been a positive experience as well. And I think it's been worthwhile, because one thing Alex did say was that, see, if a thing's worth doing and pursuing, then it's worth pursuing to the end.
Yes.
And you're right, in his memory, we will pursue this to the end.
Wise words ever, as they live on in you, and Flo, as they live on in us. And it's very interesting that, and predictable, of course, that he knew exactly how things would pan out. But the point you make about the press is really interesting, because that's the importance of the general public being able to put ordinary people to issues, understanding. And that was the beauty and the point in doing that press conference, because Alex wanted people to see real live examples of the impact this was going to have on people. Now, you've mentioned Rachel Moon, one of the excellent lawyers at Government Law Centre. Of course, your case is being looked after by Government Law Centre. It's been in the Court of Session this week. Many procedural hearings, of course, till we get to the substantive nature of the debate. You're represented by Solicitor Advocate Mike Daly, who was on the show just before Christmas, and of course Joanna Cherry, KC. But you also have support from another major organisation, Peter.
EHCR?
Yes.
Yeah, it's the, I always get this wrong. It's the, God, I can't
European
remember.
Human Rights Commission.
European Human Rights Commission. I can remember that. I always get it mixed up with AHCR, which is the thing that you get for aid and that. Yeah, I mean, they've come along and they've provided quite a bit of funding, quite a bit of support, and kind of are seeing us through. And we just got a kind of thing about, you know, the legal jargon, if you like, about what's expected. But I think when you see an organisation like that, which is very busy, and the things that it takes on, like human rights. I don't know if I've ever thought of this as human rights. I've thought of it as an injustice.
Yes, Mike Daly, of course, spoke about the human rights element in this, which is a cog and a hugely important wheel, and there'll be much discussion on this in times to come. But you are very ably represented by a great team of lawyers. You're fighting on behalf of all pensioners across Scotland and indeed the United Kingdom, and more power to you, Alba. But I don't want you to leave, because coming up after the break, we're going to speak to your local publican, Robert Slavin, who runs the Eagle Inn in Coatbridge, to talk a bit more about what are the issues facing people in Scotland and what do they talk about when they're having a pint. So we'll see you all after the break.
Water is life, but not all water is equal. Our water ionizer restructures and alkalizes water for optimum hydration and detoxification, recreating the planet's ultimate water sources, found in lightning-struck lakes and newly melted icebergs. H2 Pure Source. Change your water. Change your life.
Welcome back to Scotland Speaks, where in much of the break we've been arguing about who sits where on the sofa, but I'm delighted to be joined by Robert Slavin, who's accompanying Peter and Flo Fanning on the chair here in Scotland Speaks, who is the owner of the local pub. Welcome to Scotland Speaks, Robert Slavin.
Delighted to be here, Tasmina.
Welcome to Scotland Speaks, Robert Slavin. Now, you own the Eagle Inn in Coatbridge, which is where all things interesting and necessary to discuss for the people of Coatbridge and beyond takes place. Yeah. Busy pub, you're also a martial arts expert, and in full disclosure, you're also a member of the National Executive Committee of the Alba Party, where martial arts haven't yet required to be deployed, but you never know. Now, delighted to welcome you to the show because, of course, your pub is the home of much discussion, and indeed it's the local for Peter and Flo. How much has this case against the Scottish and UK governments been discussed, and how much is a winter fuel payment an issue for the people of where your pub is located?
It's very much an issue, and I think it started in the pub. It was actually Peter talking to a couple of the guys on the Saturday afternoon, just having a beer and just talking about where the winter fuel payment was cut. So Peter actually mentioned to me about it, and because my position in Alba, I'd say to Alex, and then Alex is like, he took up the mantle, and we were delighted he did so. But it's very much a topic of conversation. I mean, people just can't believe, they've come in and they've taken this money off pensioners, and then they want to means test it, and they'll get absolute absurdity of Anis Sarwar going to say Scottish Labour are going to put it back in, but they want it means tested, but it'll be about 3 years down the line. So it's just too little, too late, and I just think people need to grasp the nettle here and realise what's happening. There's people really going to suffer this winter. People are going to die from it as well, you know. So we're delighted that Peter and Flo have been really representing the Eagle Inn very well. We're delighted for that. But you know, they've been great, you know, and I think for not just for the people in Scotland, for the people in the UK as well, it's a worthwhile cause, and I'm glad Peter actually discussed and brought up, and I'm glad I moved on to Alex, who then get the ball rolling, and here we are here, and it's going to go to court, and hopefully the guys will win.
Absolutely, and as Peter and Flo have said, that's very much for them in Alex's name, and you said you'd carry it on through to the end. I mean, is Peter sort of the quiet type in your pub?
He actually is. You know, to be fair, Peter is very much a quiet. Well, you know, Peter, some of the company we have. Listen, pubs used to be like the town square, didn't they? You know, so basically, mine's is like that. Now, for the regulars, it is. You know, I've got a very mixed clientele because I do so much different things. You know, I've got function rooms, I do outside events, I get in tribute bands. So we get different. How can you say, clientele come in different weeks, so you get a broad perspective of what people are thinking and how they're if you get talking to them, about not so much politics. I think the most thing people are worried about just now is the cost of living, you know, how wages are going down, prices are going up, you know, and people just feel as if they're working to survive. Nobody's really any disposable income to go out, even go to the cinema, go out for a restaurant, take yourself, go away on holiday. People are really worried just now, and I think that's the biggest bugbear that I listen to, you know, is that people just really, and even I can tell within in the pub, maybe you get some people come in maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks. That's now once every 3, once every 4 weeks, you know, so it's really biting in hard. And I think the way this Labour government, who promised the world before they get in and have broken every pledge before it, people are just so disheartened and just full of apathy about politics in general and wondering where they're going to turn. And that's up to us and what Peter and Flo are doing just now to try and make sure that people power, we can try and make a difference here, because we shouldn't just be accepting these positions, and we should be fighting them, we should be challenging them.
So you've articulated actually really well an important topic, which is the fall of Labour in such a short period of time after a landslide general election victory. People where you live voted Labour. You have a Labour MP round about. All of the neighbouring areas have Labour members of Parliament. Peter and Flo, do you feel, I'm not asking how you voted in the election, nor will I, nor should I.
Yeah, I'll tell you.
Go on then if you want to.
I voted Labour and I was sorry I did.
How interesting.
Because that's how I was brought up. My father says, because he was a working man all his days, he says, if the elections come around, vote Labour, because that's the working man's party. Well, not anymore.
And do you feel let down by what Labour promised? And
definitely do. I couldn't believe it.
And Peter, is that a general feeling, people?
I think it's a general feeling throughout the whole thing, and it goes back to like the last time when Labour were going to be the saviours and all that stuff about, you know, the saviours of the Union and the vow, and they broke everything that was in the vow.
Yeah.
You know, Gordon Brown was up there giving it, this is the great world and you'll stay in Europe and whatever. None of these things came to fruition, and I think people are feeling exactly the same now. They're looking at the Labour government going, first thing you did was cut off my granny's seating allowance and stop my grandpa getting whatever, and by the way, see my car now, it costs £200 a year more to run, and petrol's up and the price of tyre and taxes gone up. And
so voter apathy, a lot of people did not vote because they didn't think there was anybody worth voting for, which is terrible for democracy, it's terrible for the future of Scotland. Robert, you're on the national executive of the Alba party. What's the party planning to do to change that perception of politicians and politics? Well,
what we're planning to do is get out around the doors and let people know that in the Alba party that we're real people, that we really want to. And our spiritual mentor Alex, he did what he said in the tin. As soon as he got a chance, he went for what he was going for, and he delivered the best government, the best governance we've had in Scotland. All these plans, these initiatives, we can point to that and say, well, we're in the Alba party because of Alex Salmond, because of what he'd done when he was in government. We can get this back. There's a lot of very good, talented people within the Alba party who are very smart, very intelligent. They've been over the course, they're trustworthy. But we have to get out there and make sure we get round the doors, we get on the streets and give people something to vote for, because I think that's what people are really needing. They're wanting something, because they are, I mean, like, Flo, I can't believe you voted Labour. You're walking home. But,
Standing there looking at it,
but again, but Flo's like a lot of folk, you know, in our area. We were always predominantly Labour, you know, but we realised Labour just there to keep us down, you know. And I think if we can give people within the Alba party, if we can give people the right candidate, the right message and the right sense of hope, then we've got every chance of returning people that's going to make Scotland better, it's going to make people's lives better and hopefully deliver that independence, because we know if we get in, we're going to go for it. There's no other going to be any other issue that's going to sidetrack us. There's no really other roads to get down. The Alba party gets in, it's independence, and that's what we want to get.
So let me come to you, Peter. I mean, Flo's put her cards on the table to say she voted Labour at the last election, but she won't be doing it again. I'm not going to ask you how you voted, but I will ask you about the SNP, because I know fundamentally you support independence as a means to making everything possible with the levers within our control to do so, as Robert has spoken about just now. Not the SNP for you?
No, I was a member of the SNP party, my local branch, and felt very much disfranchised at the end when I left. And it was all about not having a voice, not being listened to, and being dictated to from party headquarters. Before we had a meeting, after we had a meeting, during counts, whatever, everything went up to party headquarters.
Do you think things have changed since Alex was leader of the SNP and there have been subsequent leaders?
Yes. I think Alex was a person who, as Robert said, you know, what you see in the tins, what you get. I think he's honest with people, and he's not frightened to say, look, that's not the way we should be doing it, and here's the reason why, so can we think about something else, rather than, no, that's why we're doing it, because I said so, or she told me that that's what we're saying.
Now, brave, bold and determined for Scotland always, and was at the Eagle Inn on a number of occasions. Was he well received by the locals?
He was loved in the Eagle Inn, and they still talk about him, you know, and that was the thing about Alex. He had a way about him, he had an empathy with anybody he met. And I remember the last time he was in, remember we had the meeting, and there was a group of us, there was about 6 of them after the meeting of 6s, and we were sitting having a beer or something. Alex pulled up a chair and he was just regaling us with some of his past exploits, and guys loved him, you know. Alex could move in any company, you know, and he's going to be a big miss, but I think we're determined to make sure that his dream will be realised. You know, he's got so much more people, I think, have come out since his sad passing that are going to stand by him, and they're going to, we're going to make sure we get justice for him as well. But not only just that, I think his party, before Alex passed away, and I was speaking to him, I was lucky enough I could speak to him on the phone, maybe about horse racing or something, you know, but
never.
Speak to him about that. But I mean, Alex could see where we were going. He could see the green shoots coming, and he was right. You know, but all the polls now are about 5-6%. We're going to return some MSPs, and that'll be great. You know, but I think the more we get together, the more organised we get as we go towards 2026, we will certainly make a mark, and we'll make that mark always with Alex in mind, because he deserves it.
Absolutely, thank you, Peter.
I think he was a man for the people.
Yes,
and I think the people recognise that. And it's maybe a pity that Alex is dead and can't be with us to take that forward. But what a legacy to leave. What a legacy.
Well, he has in his own way left us instructions, and that's to keep fighting the great fight to free Scotland and to achieve independence for Scotland. So justice for Alex Salmond, justice for pensioners. Let's make sure we achieve both. Robert Slavin, Peter and Flo Fanning, thank you so much for joining me on Scotland Speaks, and I look forward to welcoming you back to update us all on what's happening with the case.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks very much,
And with that, we come to the end of this week's show. Thank you so much for joining me again in this new year of 2025. And a reminder that there will be a memorial for Alex Salmond, an Alba Party memorial on the 26th of January in the Lithgow Rose Football Club, place he loved. So we look forward to meeting up then. Remember, you can get your tickets to attend online. The details will appear on the screen in front of me, or just go on the Alba Party website to secure a ticket for yourself. And we look forward to hearing from you about your memories of the wonderful Alex Salmond. And I look forward to seeing you all again next week, same time, same place, where we will be discussing the Donald. Yes, indeed, President Trump will be duly inaugurated come next Monday, and there'll be lots to speak about Scotland's relationship with the Donald and what our future relationship might be as an independent country standing on our own 2 feet in this big wide world. We look forward to seeing you then. Bye for now.